Okay, so now let's discuss the next stage of Zionism, how it started, um, self destruction of the whole ideological concept of Zionism. This will be a continuation to our previous year that we spoke about how Zionism intended to be in place of Judaism, not to bring Judaism into the world culture, not to assimilate in between the Jews, assimilate in the context of as a nation within the nations of the world. Judaism claims to be a nation which was sent by God to be a light to the all nations, to be a servant as a between God and all the nations of the world, to be the ambassador of the King to all his nations of the world. And Zionists came to make Judaism as a tool to be a nation within the nations. Um, Again, not as previous tried to mix us within the other nations because that didn't succeed. Now they try to make us as a nation for independent nation, but independent nation just like all the other nations of the world, and that was they intended, and they intended to use everything that was sacred to us for the last few thousand years for their own use. They came and hijacked the Torah. They came and hijacked our Yom Tovim. They came and hijacked our ideological ideas of Mashiach. They came and hijacked our land. Everything. They took what was dear to us for a few thousand years and actually took it for their own self use, and as if this is what we were all waiting for and we were all intended to, and destroyed everything that was sacred to us and just use it as um, candy wrappers for their own use. And coming in the name of the Messiah, the name of their own holidays, all this ended up not working out for them. Because once, I always say that once the state was founded, that was the first destruction of Zionism. Because once they got what they wanted, they got a country and they got the powers that they needed. Now, what? The whole ideological idea what Zionism was to build Judaism as a nation like all the nations. Now that it became a nation like all nations, so what else is there in Zionism? And this is a famous problem. And with the culmination of the foundation of the state, that was the first step to a destruction of Zionism. Today, the only Zionism that actually exists are the true Torah Jews, people that want Israel with its Torah value, want Israel as a place to serve Hashem. They're the only ones that Israel has any meaning to them. Because for Zionist, as a Zionist, there's absolutely nothing to it. And this is where the destruction of Zionism started, was with the founding of the state, and actually culminated with the tragedy of the beginning of the Yom Kippur War, which Zionism actually got a pump by the 6 Day War because they saw, even though as we spoke, everyone said Yad Hashem, but with over time the gaiva, the humility went away, and they became very started believing in themselves. And but that all faded away with the Yom Kippur War. They were all left in turmoil. How could such a powerful nation have such a fall down in the beginning of the war? Obviously, in the end of the war, Hashem helped. But that's when Zionism actually was struck at its core in an open way. Meaning to say, obviously, when the foundation of the state, when the state was founded, wasn't an open discussion. Okay, so now's the Zionism is starting to fall apart. Just the opposite. It was seen as accomplishing its goal, and they try to enforce it on others and things like that. And they would just went with the practical day to day life. But with the foundation of the state, in under the ground, the ground started rotting and shaking, and it culminated with in a very obvious way with the Yom Kippur War, that they all saw it, that there's nothing to live for. All the nations are, we're not equal nations, we're not equal to all the nations, they're still after us, and we don't have our power. And it was a time for reckoning in the Yom Kippur War. Yechiel Mechel Feinstein, the son-in-law of the Briskerov, um, after the period of the Yom Kippur War, he was talking about the phenomenon of the Baal Tshuva, the Tshuva movement, and he says that when Yisroel Salanter went to Europe, to Western Europe, he ended up in the end of his life. He went to in the 1880s. In the beginning of the 1880s, he went to Paris, France. He wanted to make a yeshiva over there. They asked him, why are you leaving Eastern Europe and going to the Western Europe? And he says that as long as the fire was in Western Europe was going with all its strength, and we couldn't, it was hard to put it out. There was no point of going to the Western Europe. And now, after the Haskalah, the fire is out already. You mean to say it did what it did, and now what? Now the fire is not the same idea. The fire was not burning strong. It's because they did their damage. All the forests of Judaism were the beautiful forests were burned down to the bottom. Now they have nothing. Now what? So now's the time the Yetzer Hara is not so strong, and now's the time we could start from the beginning, rebuilding the Judaism over there. And Zikr Bechil Mechel Feinstein, that now we're in a similar situation. We see thousands of Baal Tshuvas. We never saw such things. Yeshivas of Baal Tshuvas. We may have saw one or two Baal Tshuvas, but it doesn't. Yeshivas of Baal Tshuvas would never existed, and like we mentioned this. We're seeing what the pasuk says. This became a physical thing. We're tapping onto this navi, and all parts of Judaism, all over. They're feeling the emptiness of Torah, and they want to fill that void with Torah, and it's our chance to fill it up, and we have to do something about it. Also, when he witnessed in America the emptiness and the Jews returning to Judaism was in America also. I actually think the first yeshivas of Baal Tshuvas was in America. And he explained that the reason is because all their ideological things has vanished. All they're empty, and they're looking for a reason in life. And this the Avodah Zarah for the Medina is already ausgewebt, and the young are just simply empty. And they're looking for something. Let someone came into Hashem to fill it up. And Pshach, why it's in one place, we see B'chush how their ideological has gone, has dissipated, has stopped. The ideological idea of Zionism. Avram Noach Abramowitz from Agudas Yisrael, Netz Yisrael, and by the 53rd Agudas Convention, Tashlim Lamed Vav, spoke, and he was speaking about Kirv Rechoikim, and he said all the sides of socialism and Zionism just went bankrupt. And today everything is destroyed. All the ideas of communist and being equal and be equal to Goyim, everything has been destroyed. Once, and we're experiencing here in Eretz Yisrael all the tzmoin of Hashem, the emptiness. Everyone's feeling that yush and the koine, atzvos, and there's a lot of customers available to fill them up with some teichen, with real higher quality of ideological tachlis. In Sefer Shasheres Hadoros is brought down that Chaim Weizmann, the first president of Zion of Israel, and he was very influential in the creation of the state. He said, as long as the light is burning, is on in the offices of Good Yisrael, the Zionism won't be able to stand up strong. And that's true. That's what happened. He wanted to take that apart. He wanted to shouldn't have a koyach, but he was right, and that's why the fire of a Good Yisrael is going stronger and stronger. And he writes over there in Sefer Shasheres Hadoros, in today's generation, we see already how the third of the grandchildren and of the founders of the state are actually learning Torah in Yerushalayim and Bnei Barak, learning Shakis Ayah, Avnei Miluim. When we see this, we know really who won the war. Yaakov Edelstein says in the beginning, when the foundation of the state, there was problems. There was big hafganot. The Haredim they wanted were making hafganot because they wanted to do something that had to do with religion, and didn't let certain things. And actually, one person got killed, and there was a tremendous uproar. Ben Gurion said over there, we have to make sure, we have to be smart and not lose our hope for the money and not make anyone angry. And he said over there, one thing is for sure, one thing is for sure, that everyone is going to go through, that all those that go through the office of education in our army will come out, be a real Israeli, obviously not from, and within another 20 years, there won't be any wars. And there won't be any problems because there won't be any religious Jews. Yeah, there'll be a little bit left to remember who those people that used to be, but we won't have any problems with them anymore. The Klausenberger Rebbe speaks about this Barichas. In one place he says he remembers when I guess this was even before the founding of the state, that when in Romania, the son Avner, he called out and he said, if there would just be someone in the UN that representation of the Jews in the UN, there would be no more any problems. No one will run after the Jews. That was the ideological foundation of Zionism. If it will just be, this is what he remembers him saying already in Romania, just be one representative for the Jews, everything would be fine. And obviously, he says, and Klausenberger goes on, speaking the obvious, that this is where their downfall of Zionism is, that it really didn't change, nothing really changed. And he says that this depression that they're in because of the state of Israel, the state of the ideological state of Israel, is that depression of that destruction, which was formulating in his times, is the beginning of their coming back to tshuva. And he also speaks about how all the has so many grandchildren from those people that try to destroy Judaism with Zionism actually became true Baal Tshuvas. Rabbi Pincus actually took the courage to say something fascinating. Don't think the Satmaris agree with him, but this is what he stated. He says he thinks that if the foundation of the state would be in his times, um, then there's no question that the Satmar Rebbe would be masking to go into the Knesset. And why? In his times, everyone was afraid of Zionism. Since today already, there's nothing what they be afraid about. The only place that holds up idea of Zionism that's in the yeshivas, only one that actually believes in these ideas. You think he says I remember 32 years the 32 year in the 30 years he says in the last 30 years every time a prime minister has a problem with the Medina, he always he starts talking about the war and changing conversations to frighten everyone because they actually had nothing to stand up for, nothing to show. He says, I remember the march after the 6 Day War, the gaiva they had, the confidence they had. He says, today it's a joke. No one would make such a march. It's the only place where the flag, the Yom Ha'atzmaut, really has a meaning is the top of the building of Yeshiva. Obviously, he's referring to Panovich Yeshiva. Because, meaning to say that the only ones that really believe in Israel is the place for Jews, and there's a meaning for Jews. It has a meaning is in Yeshiva. They understand the preciousness of it. And Shlomo Valba, Simcha Wasserman, all of them also go in the same ruach, explaining how the emptiness of the ideological Zionism on Zionism is what's bringing back Klal Yisrael to Hashem, and we were zeichet to see like the Rav Lechem, like some of the mind Shmoyed Dvar Hashem from within the destruction of the Zionism ideological ways. And I just want to go back to this idea of why it was a Nevi'ah Sheker. Because Zionists, Mr. Hashem, I want to, in the next year, I hope, I wish, to formulate in a proper way to be able to show how what they preached in the beginning about Zionism and what are those same people preaching now. Like simply said, the left, which is an outcome of the left from the time of the foundation of the state, all those people that preach today, they're preaching equal rights. Arabs and America and Israelis have to coexist. They're fighting a big part of them. I don't know if they're fighting the idea of Israel being a Jewish state. It's a democratic state, not a Jewish state. And they're standing up for ideological things that were never ever thought, just the opposite, the way they thought in the foundation of the state, and it's called post-Zionism. There's books about this and a lot of different things about this. How the whole idea of Zionism actually doesn't have any much of a meaning now. So if all those Herzl and Ben Gurion, they all fought the foundation of the state to make a state with for the Jews, they should be even to all the other nations. The whole idea is why they left Europe was not mainly to run away from Hitler. It was more as they definitely used it, but it was more as a way of getting Hitler to be mechabed us, and maybe like this he won't disrupt us. And this is all on the idea, their ideas Means to say they built and they toiled and they went into swamps. They killed them. They got killed just for the namesake of the land of Israel, for Zionism. That was the foundation of them building in their ruach, um, to build the state. And actually, what came from that? Nothing. There again, the spirit behind the building of the state, the spirit behind Zionism, that ruach, that navi, what they were saying that we're going to build our future. There's nothing left. So many people from the left are actually leaving Israel. So yes, it's true that they maybe had a tremendous part in building Israel, but all in the context of what we said the other time earlier from one of those writers, non-religious writers, when he saw the Tshuva movement um, um, transpiring and he felt himself all lost, all alone. He says, everyone, I remember the poem of Babi Alek we learned in high school. Everyone was carried by the wind, everyone swept up by the light, and I remained alone, alone. That's what Babi Alek was saying of either his experience before he became swept up with the wind. And this is what he wrote in the poem. Everyone was carried by the wind, everyone swept up by the light of Zionist, and I remained alone, alone. So the writer is writing in Haaretz. Back then, in the times of Bialik, it meant the opposite about all those that drifted away from the yeshiva during the Enlightenment. And now the wheel has turned. No more Enlightenment, no more universities, no more business, no Zionism, no army. None of it seems to be enough anymore. That whole ideological idea that everyone was swept up for to build the state of Israel. This is what a non-religious person is writing. None of it seems to be enough anymore. They're returning to the roots. Look, everything I told you about the war, about mysticism, about everything, everyone's personal issues, maybe all of it is true. But sometimes I feel like it's something deeper than all that. Maybe it's in our genes. We're all Jews, aren't we? Maybe, and here's the key point, maybe the whole story of the Enlightenment and Zionism was just a transitional phase to build a state. And now, after that passed, after those generations have finished their historic role, we're returning to what we really are, to what we're supposed to be. When I tell you this, believe me, I'm scared because I know I'm teetering like an apple on a tree. Another week, maybe two, maybe a month, or maybe a year, and I'll fall too. So he's describing how, from a non-religious point of view, how to him it seems like the whole Zionism is falling apart, and it was all just a fairy tale, just a chaloim chaloim. They saw chaloimis. It was all a navi, but it ended up being sheker, just a ruach evivim. It was just something which we perceive to have some foundation. So yes, the state was built, but it wasn't built for them. It wasn't built for their ideology. It was all that was all a farce. It was all not true. Their whole ideological um, ruach was all not all fake. It's all dissipating. It's all just it's all vanishing, and everyone's coming back to their original roots. So that's why it's in the Navi Sheker. That is why it's in Navi Sheker. Because there was nothing to what they have to say. There's nothing, anything. The Zionism is already in the States. Like Yaakov actually said, it's like the Avodah Zarah of Baal Pa'ar. It's already like just like Buddhism. It's just like Yiddishism and Haskell and Reform and Conservative. It's all gone. It's all history. It's all for the history books. Today we have to start making books about Reform Judaism. It's all gone. And in a few more generations, there's nothing to be left of them. It's all like it's all like the Karaites and there are some left. Like they said on the religious that there'll be some left just to remember what those religious were once. Were once. This is all the same things like the Shabbaten, the Shapsitzri's things, and all those movements came and went, and so has been with the Zionism movement. Has came and has went. There is nothing left of it anymore. Yes, the people are around, the flesh are around, but the ideas are for the past, and that is where we're holding. And Hashem should help us. We should get more clarity on the subject.